Excellent. Okay. So arriving, I think that means I can now change it to gallery view, but it will still record in speaker. Uh, Welcome, Fiona May, everyone. And I'm queuing up my screen so I can see my notes. Maybe someday I'll be polished, and probably not. In the meantime, you get to just navigate my tech live with me. Okay, now I can at least, oops, nope, as soon as I touch it, I have an opinion. We're going to talk about that. I have an opinion about how tech should work, and it, it doesn't always do that. All right, starting again here. Well, welcome. I think this is our third session. Third, thank you. Third. So thus far we looked at the basic that please always go back to the loving oneself, Pia, dear one. You can use those lovely, lovely, lovely tools like the butterfly hug that I learned from Enchem and Defo. These bilateral sweeping. And then maybe we'll just start with another one that I've learned from Paul Linden, and I've used in other places as well. I'm going to stand up. Try not to cut my head off. All right, can I get a thumbs up if you can still see me? Or sorry, hear me. Thumbs up, excellent, thank you. This is conducting an orchestra. Ooh, and I can tell right now from my own body, this is super helpful, that it helps me to both notice my feet. I'm standing on the ground, but it can be your seat on the chair below you, the platform below you. It helps me to like things move. I'm feeling flow into my head. And then I'm also just realizing there are so many places that I don't need to be clenching to just be able to move my hands in kind of a very simple, easy movement of conducting an orchestra. So noticing if that shifts anything for you as it is for me right now. This is a wonderful thing. I will go off to the bathroom and do this right before coming out to meet people if I need to like resettle myself so that I can show up in a good way with each other. So as I think most of you know, I was in a fun little fender bender a couple of weeks ago on January 2nd, and feeling the impact of a whiplash, and then the way that the body guards around that. So the exercises from week 1 have really, really been my friend for helping me to calm, ground, and center. And then we went full scale into quarrels last week. How do we, what is the embodiment of a quarrel? What is the embodiment of a dispute? And how might you react or interact with that so that it's a diffusing rather than an aggravating? And today we're going to go to that more subtle level of opinions and views. So please, while we're exploring opinions and views, you're welcome to take whatever posture is supportive for you. Don't worry about standard Zoom etiquette. As long as you're clothed, we're fine. And you know, so if you want to lean back, you want to stand, lay down, whatever is supportive for you, please feel free to do that. You can have your camera on or off or at different times. If you speak, it will pick up both your video and your audio. So if you don't want your picture on, just turn it off. And if you would like to not have it on the recording at all, I should make sure, yes, it is recording. See, tech. Then you can raise hand, virtual or real, whatever real means. And I will stop the recording and we can then resume after your comment or question. So I deeply appreciate this time to explore, and feel free to interject, interrupt, question, let this be a playground, an exploration, not just, I Ahimsa would call it the mug and jug teaching. I've got a jug and I fill all the little mugs. No, we're all mugs. So we'll go back to some of the teachings that, of course, I'm a Buddhist monastic, so I'm coming from the perspective of the suttas from the Buddha as my background. And the more I read, the more I find these fantastic nuggets of embodiment. Right there, the Buddha describing what do people do when, and it's right there. And we're still doing the same things 2,600 whatever years later. Probably we're doing it 2,600 plus years before too. I am, as I said, a Buddhist monastic. I'm not going to go through all of the introduction I did in the previous weeks, but will say that I'm not a licensed anything. So if you're in need of real professional support, please go find a real professional. This is our playground together today. And the recording will be uploaded to YouTube. I'm getting a better hang of it, so pretty quickly, but not immediately. This week's topic, opinions and views, and feel free even at that to calm the system. Yeah, feel free to have your camera off for certain. This week, we're going to look at opinions and views from two sides. When someone is questioning our opinion or view, and when what we shape ourselves to navigate our own views. So we'll start with the sutta that I looked at, and there's no need to have read the suttas before. You can definitely show up. I'll tell you enough to that we can play with it together. The first sutta that we looked at last week was the Honeyball Sutta, where Dandapani comes up leaning on he's carrying a stick and he leans on it just because that's what he does. And his nickname is actually Stick in Hand. So this was his affect, his way of moving through the world. And he goes to confront the Buddha and ask about what the Buddha teaches. And the Buddha tells him that I teach that I don't argue, I don't have conflict with anyone in the world. And there was nothing for Dandapani to then grapple onto. So the sutta says that his response, because he wasn't looking for a sense of, oh, I'm going to learn something here. He just wanted to fight. So, but there was nothing to fight. So it says he shook his head, waggled his tongue, raised his eyebrows until the brow puckered into 3 furrows, and departed leaning on his staff. So there we have one way that if somebody isn't there to argue with us and we want to fight, we might just like, okay, and leave. Other in the sutta we looked at this week, it was with another wanderer. This one was named Sarabha, and he had gone to learn the teachings. He thought he learned them, but all he'd really learned was the monastic rules, which, you learn the rules, but if you're not living the rules, what's the point? So he learned how to recite the rules, didn't actually learn the Dhamma. And he then goes about saying, I learned the Buddhist teaching and it's just rubbish. And so the Buddha went to him and just said, oh, I hear you've been saying something about the teachings that you've learned them fully. So he doesn't talk about the rubbish part. I've heard you learned them fully. If that's so, I would like to hear what you've learned. If you've left anything out, I'll fill you in. If you have it spot on, then I'll agree with you. And so there's that's not the going in to have a fight, but still, because of Sarabha's disposition, he wanted to be right. He wanted to, be able to say, hey, I learned it. It's rubbish. So he was like, no, I can't hear you. I don't know. I used to do that to my brother sometimes. No, I can't hear you. Anyone else? I do not want to hear what you have to say because I have an opinion and I'm going to keep it. Thank you very much. What I love about the sutta is this is 2,600 years ago. And the Buddha says there are 3 ways, and we're going to play with those in just a moment. 3 ways that typically someone who doesn't want to hear, doesn't actually want to have a conversation, doesn't actually want to come to some mutual resolution, they might, 1, dodge the issue, distracting the discussion with irrelevant points. 2, display annoyance, hate, and bitterness, which I kind of think was what Dandapani was doing. Or 3, they'd sit silent, dismayed, shoulders drooping, downcast, depressed, with nothing to say. So is there any, before we play with this, is there anything that anyone would like to say or ask? Or okay, head shakes. So, all right, wonderful. So if you would like, let's see, seated or standing, it doesn't really matter. I think I've got more mobility if I stand. I can feel it, and you're welcome to do the same, or whatever posture you're in. You can even dodge lying down. I do internal dodging. So I'm going to approach you as the Buddha approached Sarabha, and I'm going to ask, just a similar kind of question. And maybe you can, don't worry about trying one of these on at first. Just notice what you do kind of naturally at this moment. We haven't done any other prep other than just a really brief kind of shaking it out. At this moment, as I approach you with this, see what you do. All right. So I hear you've been telling people about my method for feeding squirrels. I'd really like to hear if you got it right. Could you tell me? And I'll give you input if you don't have it quite right now. So what do you do? What do you sense? What do you feel? How do you move internally when I approach you and say, hey, I hear you've been talking about how I feed squirrels. I want to see if it's actually the way I do. Anyone want to give feedback on how that moves them? Kat.
I feel like I took a half step back, like I didn't like physically, but and then I felt like a little bit of nervousness almost like in the chest, like, oh no, what if maybe I don't have it right? Like, and as the person who likes to know things and likes to have the answers to things, like that's where I was like, oh, maybe I don't know. Like,
yeah, anyone else? I'm gonna definitely own up to that exact sensation, that sense of taking a step back. Sometimes I actually physically do, but if not, my energy, my sense of my body takes a step back, and then kind of a tightening and kind of a fear response for me. Maybe I'll get that tingly, sweaty feeling under my arms or my head, or the dissociative, I want out of here because I'm about to be challenged, even if it's a friendly, hey, I heard you. We're talking about how I feed squirrels, you know. Um, anyone have another response? There's no right response. It's just what emerges. Nicole.
Similarly, I felt like defensive, like, why do you want to know? What's coming towards me next?
Mhm. And I see in the chat contracted. And I think that's true in both what Nicole and Kat and what I was saying as well, that shrinking, contracting, Paul calls it smallifying, the smallification, very, very common. So sometimes it's easier to understand if we practice a couple of unskillful ways and then find our way into the skillful. So if you want, we can try that first one, dodging the issue. So try to embody as I ask you about your knowledge of squirrel feeding based on my imminent teachings. um, Dodge the issue and go ahead and have your cameras muted. But you can verbally also try to redirect me. So the embodiment you might try on is dodging the issue, which might physically be dodging, and also then distracting the discussion with some sort of irrelevant point. Maybe talk about rabbits instead or something. So back into your body. Oh, I hear you've been talking about this teaching I have about how to feed squirrels, and I'd really like to know how you're talking about it. So if I'll sit down. I'm the recipient of that. I might do. Oh, yeah. Oh, and speaking of squirrels, did you see that family of chipmunks? Oh, they were so cute. I think there must be a den of them around there. So it's kind of a low key, just squirrel. um, anyone have you done that or had that done to you? Yeah, yeah, for sure. Does it feel sometimes it's effective to start that way? Like I need to reground, recenter, and so a little bit of a sidetrack and then a winding back and say, oh yeah, all right, now I'm able to talk about squirrels. But the embodiment of the dodge, what is what does that feel like to you? The dodge and the redirect. Anyone have a visceral sense of what was happening when they did that?
The what came to mind for me is I'm a long-term Tai Chi practitioner. And so there's a practice called push hands that you do with another person. And long story short, I hated it when I first learned it because when we were first training in it, it tended to be that the men didn't know how to be soft. And so you'd spend your entire time guarding yourself from being pushed over, and then your arm would hurt for days. And but that wasn't what came to me with this. It was just the sense of kind of sinking back and turning so that it would just glance off.
Mhm.
But yeah, it just feels more gentle, like give yourself some space and a little more time.
Yeah. And so we're picking up on that wholesome activity we can do with this as long as we then weave our way back. But I have definitely been with people like every time you try to bring them back, I shouldn't have picked squirrels as my initial topic because I usually use squirrel as my distraction. Squirrel. Um, yeah, so we'll have to pick cherries. Oh, it's cherry season, and then you say, well, yeah, but what about the squirrels? And they say, isn't the weather really warm today? And you say, oh yeah, but what about the squirrels? So can be skillful. So what we do today is we kind of look at what aspect of this approach is helpful for me and where am I never actually having the conversation that this person came here to have. So thank you. Other responses? Dodging the issue. Okay. All right, well, then maybe we try on number 2, which is to display annoyance. Maybe we take hate out, but unless you want, you can try. And bitterness. So boy, have I done this when somebody's come up and said, hey, did you do the dishes the way I asked you to? This kind of like, someone said, why are you asking me? So, all right, so go ahead and try it. Maybe I'll use that dishes one of, just kind of out of left field here. Hey, I saw you did the dishes earlier. Did you rinse them like we talked about? Now try on that. You always ask me these questions. Why can't you just trust me? What happens when that is, and for me, that one comes up super fast. It's a super, like, there can be no challenge in their tone or the words, but it's just hit something in me. And what do they call that? They touched a nerve. How often that happens when they touch a nerve. So I think the Buddha's talking about that, coming up and he touches a nerve. Is there anything redeeming in this one that we can sense and utilize?
I feel like it touches into selfing. Like, at least for me, like, I feel like whenever I get defensive, like, I might not notice it at that moment, but later I'm like, oh, yeah, because I was building up the ego and hiding behind that and really selfing, which tends to be one of my patterns anyway. But like, I
Anyone
definitely
else?
sense that. Yeah.
I'm still selfing for sure. Yeah. So I don't find that responding with annoyance and bitterness is ever itself a productive thing for the relationship. I haven't noticed that. But I think, as you're saying, Kat, I do notice it. It's a good alarm bell. It's a good, wake up for me to be like, and now I've talked about the, I'm a conditioned being. I was like, I also use, here we go again. Here we go again. That's me doing me. And I can more often than not laugh at it now. Particularly, I definitely have this thing about people asking me to do something that I already planned to do. People asking me about how I'm doing, giving me advice about how I'm doing something when that's exactly how I was going to do it. And people asking me if I did something, if I said I would, and it's like, been checking up on me. I notice those are my touch characteristics that I'm working on. And sometimes I also want you to notice when one of those just passed you right on by and you didn't grab the bait. And I love the monastic that I live with, because we can actually play with these things. We can say to each other, it's like, oh, triggered, and then do something to bring it right back down. And we don't even have to have a conversation about it. It's just like, hey, my stuff, I've got it. I'm doing my stuff right now. And it's humor, Buddhist humor we can bring in. But it's universal. You don't need to put that label of Buddhist on it. It's just obviously comes up in the particular environment I live in. So yeah, sometimes these qualities of response can just be that little wake-up calls of here we go again. And not taken so seriously. We'll get to that, not taken so seriously. So we'll do one more before we switch to the other side. So this last one also is a interesting one. They sit silent, dismayed, shoulders drooping, downcast, depressed, and say nothing. So if you want, you can kind of shake, come back into a general state of presence. And then here comes the drive-by comment, you know. Hey, I heard you were going to write a paper about such and such. Can you run that by me? Please tell me the details of it before you publish it. What are the details for this? What did you do if you were trying this on? How did that feel of I think this one's really that shrinking, contracting, but contracting like really in a puddly kind of way. Now, do you feel like you can go write the paper from that state? Do you feel like you can even give a response from that state? Has anyone else done this state? Yeah, okay, got a few at least. Yep, all right, I'm not the only one on Team Slumped at times. I'm not going to seed it. What do you think from that? What works for you out of that, and what doesn't work for you out of that state? You know? Can you tell me all of your plans for how you're going to accomplish that big project? I want to double check it for you. I know it's a 2-year project. I want all the details so that I can really make sure you're doing it right. Yeah, nobody can even speak. I think that's, for me, when it goes to that point of overwhelm and just kind of a soggy, depressed quality, the negative, I think, is pretty obvious. It's like we're not connected. We're not actually going to make progress on the paper, nor the relationship that we're having the conversation in. But I do notice for myself, again, it's not an alarm bell. It's more like a quiet, oh, poor dear, sweetheart. I need to go back and bring in those exercises of, you know, Pia, dear one, back on myself. Because I realize usually when I'm in that situation, I've lost some of my confidence. And I'm not talking about an arrogant, puffed up thing that needs to be defended. Just this sense of, I'm okay on this, and I'm okay to be wrong. I'm okay to get some criticism that's going to help me. I'm okay. I've lost some of that. I've deflated. And so when we notice in our practice that we're deflating, again, it's a little bit of a warning sign. And so much of our practice is about balancing. You know, balancing the awakening factors, not feeding the hindrances, these kind of things. So this is about balance too. It's like when I realize I'm doing deflate, I can bring in, for me, metta for myself. Metta means this kind of loving friendliness, this warm-heartedness, this, Paul talks about it as the heart like a light bulb or a fly just radiating in all directions. And that I know that warmth and radiance is coming from what I'm doing, from what I'm cultivating. And so sometimes what these habits of response are reminders for us to say, oh, what would be a good tool to balance this right now? So am I just dodging the issue? Maybe that's helping me to kind of take a step back and reformulate. But if I just keep dodging, it's like I'm avoiding being in the presence in the practice. If I'm, annoyance and is my response, then the balancing there might be the soothe and because I've gotten to what was did you say ego or self now myself is getting taking up so much space, and it's like, oh hey, there maybe we can have enough space for both of us. And then the correcting, balancing, bringing together factor for this shrinking dismay is that warmth, the metta, the expanded all directions practice that we did. And I think what I'd like to do is before we go into like the details of examining this sense of my perceptions and how much I believe and trust my own opinions and views, is let's do that together. That, if you wish, that centering and grounding that's done with the directions breathing. So as we've explored some of these, more constricted patterns, it's good to come back to what type of response is just kind of universally supportive. And that's noticing the breath, noticing our posture, feeling the surface below us, lengthening, but then softening, letting the belly be soft, plop down, just no resistance. Let the belly just hang. It looks like most of us are sitting, so you've got your pelvic floor resting against a surface. Let the surface do all the supporting. Just let it be loose. The diaphragm in our chest, bottom of the lung area, soft. And then the tongue, the mouth, also just loose in the mouth. And then noticing the breath with the breathing, or just knowing we're breathing, directing our attention in the down direction, the earth below our seat. Maybe your feet are touching the ground. Maybe they're tucked up and the backs of your legs are touching. Noticing and directing our attention to the space below. And switching to noticing and sending attention to the space above as we continue to breathe. And then that sense in both of those directions at once, breathing in a body, and allowing the attention to go down and up, aware of this verticality. Noticing that in the forward and backward direction, you can do one at a time, or that just that sense of a depth, that our attention can be in front and behind. Softly breathing. Even coughing, breathing. Aware of the space in front, the space behind. This depth. This is the way that Stacey Haynes teaches this directional breathing. And then the other dimension is side to side, our breadth. Where the space to our left and to our right. Sense of breadth, of width. And then all those directions at once, the sense of breathing and awareness in our length, our depth, and our breadth. Linden calls it 6 directions breathing. And bringing that quality of warmth in the heart. And allowing it to just travel on that awareness in all directions. And if your eyes have been closed, you're welcome to open them. Or just listen with eyes closed. I kind of have a sense that when we do this sort of practice, that opinions and views being challenged is easier to navigate. Does anyone else have that sense that, yeah, head nods, that this kind of practice, when someone challenges us, we're, as we talked about in the first week, that of balance, we're not knocked off balance in the same kind of way when we have all of these directions and awareness that's expansive. So the second part of today's practice is the holding ourselves in such a way that we're not blown off, but we're not. We had a bunch of idioms, I think they're called idioms last week about the leaving, attacking, or I'm now calm enough from this, I can't recall any of them. So if you do, go ahead and say them out, but it actually doesn't really matter. You know what I mean, that sense, where we're going to enter a quarrel or run away from it, or engage or flee or shrink. You don't see me, no, I can't hear you. So in the second sutta, it's one of the most famous suttas in the early sutta tradition. There are definitely in the later traditions some more famous than this, but from the early tradition, this is one of the more famous ones. It's called the honey ball. And there's quite it's one of the teachings that actually is as hard to parse in some ways as maybe the Lotus Sutra is for later traditions, because the phrasing is a little bit much. What the Buddha tells us is that judgments driven by proliferating perceptions beset you. That he describes that as the seat of where all of these problems come from, but that's a little hard to unpack. And so I like to go to the body. This is why reading the suttas is not enough. Judgments, when I get into that, I have an opinion, I have a view, it's like this. I want my podium, here's my soapbox. What is it that derives that? It's proliferating perceptions. I see the world this way. And then the proliferation is, and it's right, and you're wrong, and they're wrong. And we could all save the world if we only did it my way, which might be true. It might be true. But is it helpful when it creates a judgment, and that judgment besets me. And when I think of it, something besetting me, it's like it's taken me over. I'm driven by it. And that drive, even if the direction is wholesome, it's like it's Paul calls it driving with the brakes on. You know, it's just not effective. And so the good news about what the Buddha is talking about is like, when you see this, then what falls away is all of the tendencies for views and doubts and conceits and ignorance. And it's the end of taking up the sword, quarrels, arguments, and the unskillful qualities cease. Now, all in one paragraph, yeah, the Buddha maybe got that, but what about for us who, I don't know, is anyone here already? No, okay, darn, I was going to turn the class over to you. Yeah, I'm not there yet. So what is it that I can do right now when somebody comes up and says, hey, I want to know if your method for feeding the squirrels is correct, or if you're doing it wrong. I know more about squirrel digestion than you do. One of the basic things is that centering. And then another is back to what we were doing in the first week of balance. It's like play, you know, don't take it so seriously. You know, whether you think we've been doing this for just one lifetime or many, just even all of the crazy stuff we've done in this life. Just, okay, here we go again. So if one of you were to, you know, say, hey, I really like the way that NChem teaches this better, or Lisa, or, you know, Paul, or you know, if that's, you know, do I take that step back and go, whoa, what about me? Am I chopped liver? Or can I, as Kat brought up, that sense of self, what about me? I mean, what a phrase, what about me? What about me? I mean, I can't, when I do it, I immediately, what about me? And the other one is, what about me? Neither one of those is going to work. So it's just like, oh, yep, my robe's going to fall off. Probably a good sign. Shedding some of my views. What about me? Yeah, there I go again. Yep, there I go again. And so when my opinion is challenged, oh, I'm just remembering this wonderful time. I was in the hallway at another monastery, and we were having to have these really quick, short exchanges because our time together was short. And we were discussing some important topics, but it was like these drive-by hallway conversations, which if you're in a family relationship, they probably happen to you all the time, even or in a work environment. And so we're in one of these drive-by conversations, and I said, yeah, but people look on it in such a way, and we have to consider the way people are looking at it. And the other person, who's Italian, went, what people? And it was, you know, it was simply asking me to clarify what I was saying, you know, but what people, and I did, I literally took a step back, which gave me a little bit of that space, because then I took that moment to go, what a great question. And that was my reply. What a great question. What people am I basing this suggestion on? And I said, you know, it's this amorphous them. Why am I following that? So that challenge, because I was willing, I wasn't defensive, and I wasn't feeling like I was being totally criticized. It was the way I could pick it up was, wow, what a great question. So if somebody comes up to us and asks these things, that's I think how the Buddha handles it is, okay, what a great question. Let's explore that. And I mean, I just naturally, can you see my body language? You know, I'm grounded, I'm centered, I'm open. And so then if they're going to come at me with something, I have both the capacity to embrace it or to deflect it, or even to push and move it away. Because I've not, I without having my opinions and views and self be so firm and rigid, I'm able to be responsive and open for that very quick change that happened like that in the hallway. What, people? Oh, it's like a whole space opened up of where we could take the exploration next, because I was willing to be questioned. And I was willing together then to explore what people and do they matter as we're making this decision. So I'd like to open it up for scenarios where you might play with this, how it impacts your practice as you explore your own opinions and views. We didn't really get into, challenging our internal views, but it's the same. It's the same. And I just, on interest of space, I want to make sure that we can go into that as an exploration if there's time. Anyone like to open up with what's going on for you in this exploration?
Hello, it's Karen.
Hey, Karen.
Can you hear me okay at this distance?
That's great.
Okay. So this was kind of a win for me in that my practice helped me deal with a difficult situation. I was faced with someone who had was teacher misconduct in our Sangha. And I was at an event where he was there. Mm-hmm. And I knew that might happen. So I just remained very grounded. And he was kind of waiting for me. And he extended his hand. Mm. And so I took it and I shook it because I wanted to make sure it was no anger there, but don't teach is what I wanted to say. Mm-hmm. Because he's gone on to teach. And I said, he tried to provoke me with something he thought that I did, which I didn't even do, against him. And I just disregarded it. And I said, I used his name and I said, I urge you not to teach. And then he tried to say something else to get a conversation going. And I knew this was done. And I just took my hand and I walked away. And it was really good because I stayed grounded and I got my point across, which is you shouldn't teach, rather than being angry, because that was going to be just this, right? Anyway, so I thought that was a win. Obviously, it's still emotional for me, but I felt that at the time it worked really, it went as best as it could have gone.
I think that's an amazing metric to put on something. Not, did it go perfectly? I mean,
It was unpleasant.
yeah.
Yes.
When we were in the little fender bender a couple weeks ago, the driver said, "This is not ideal." And then proceeded to deal with it with utmost grace. And, you know, it's not like you get out of these encounters, and you just do the best you can and really focus. I love that you phrase it as a win, you know, especially if you have, there are definitely many suttas that I don't know in this series we'll have time to get into, of when you just don't even go there because they're not receptive, you know. So you can make a statement with power, love, gentle but firm, and decide my energies aren't going here. Yeah. And then it's also not, there's no tightness in the view you have. Views are not in and of themselves a negative thing. It's a fixed view that you then have to, as you said, defend or hide from the world so you can keep holding it. Views are bread and butter of interacting. And so when you form one with wisdom and you still have, you know, if maybe something changed in this individual, maybe you could change that view and say, okay, I think it's now time at which you can teach. But there might have been some substantial shift that occurred that you really could sense in their manner before you would say that. And that's kind of what the Buddha was doing with this individual, Sarabha, is like, okay, you're going out and telling what it is that I said. I'd just like to check to make sure what you're saying is actually the Dhamma that I'm talking about, especially since you're putting it down. But when the monks went to the Buddha and said, hey, you know, so-and-so is saying this about you, they weren't actually approaching with that. There are suttas where the monks do just go to the Buddha and be a tattletale, you know, get another monk in trouble. You know, humans, don't shave your head and put on robes and suddenly become just perfect society beings. But in this case, they went and they said, oh, out of compassion, could you go talk to him? And the more that we can do that, like you did in that interaction, you had the compassion to shake the hand. And I imagine in that handshake, you didn't like fall into him or pull him into you. It sounded like there was a sense of balance.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Those are the measures. And as we become more embodied in our practice, we can key in on the measures of, like I said, when the person I live with says something and I feel that nerve has been touched, or when I feel very, very balanced and I can say, oh, that was a win. Thank you. Anyone else? Nicole.
I'm glad for this topic today, because all three of these, like, avoidance or three responses, are pretty common in my daily experience. So yeah, so I just want to thank you for the topic, and recognizing, there's some deeper things going on for me, childhood things and stuff like that kind of come up in thinking of confrontation or criticism.
Yeah. Yeah. And as we work through deeper things, it's also good to just have a safe friend where you can just kind of say, hey, I'm not necessarily going to say this in the most skillful way, but I just need to, say it so that it can land in my own system and not just be stirred up. I'm not trying to dump this on you, but I just need space. I did that for a friend this morning of just sometimes if you know that person has that capacity to be a witness and you have that sense of relationship where we're going to come out of this as okay as we can. But yes, please just go ahead and navigate the unskillful, which is the best you can do right now. We aren't even going to use that word unskillful. It's what we have. These are the tools. I'm angry. I'm sad. I'm off balance. I really want to distract. And that honesty and that sense of this is what it's like to be a human being right now doing this. Then we have a chance to really heal and really hone the wholesome skills. And it's like, I'm trying to remember when I was talking with this person this morning, we came up with, wouldn't it be great to be able to be mindful but not uptight? So that feels like a good and wholesome aim for these kind of playgrounds and explorations. Practicing mindful but not uptight. Well, does that feel good for an exploration length on opinions and views today? Oh, when I picked the topic for this week, and was preparing to talk about the suttas, all I could do was then go around and talk to the monastic who's visiting here and say, oh, I have another opinion. Oh, there's another view. And it does. It makes it so much lighter to just, hey, we're conditioned like this. And look, the Buddha said people were doing the same stuff a long, long time ago. And the good news is that we also have these embodiment practices from way back then to the ones I've listed and others for today. So, also a plug, Lisa, who I was here last week. Just going to plug her again. Those who aren't currently taking a class with her, if you want just like real world practical playground, I think she's starting a new group in August or September, and you'll find that in the my reference notes of everyday black belt. Is that somebody okay, Kat's nodding, yes, everyday black belt. So yeah, check out the works of these other ones as well. Like I said, I'm not the professional, but I like to play. Yeah, and I'm welcome for any feedback. And I'm gonna, let's see, before I stop the recording, maybe we'll just do one more. Oh, so glad to be together, bowing to our practice. Okay, now I'm gonna stop the recording and we can share more freely in the after party if you wish. Stop recording.